Welcome to Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer during this month of April, which is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. Our podcast from the Max Mallory Foundation offers insights from testicular cancer survivors, their caregivers, and others touched by cancer. We do this in memory and honor of Max Mallory, who died at age 22 from testicular cancer. I'm your host, Joyce Lofstrom, a young adult and adult cancer survivor, and Max's mom. Hi, this is Joyce Lofstrom, and welcome to our podcast, Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer from the Max Mallory Foundation. I'm your host, and I'm a young adult and adult cancer survivor. And I'm really happy to welcome today two guests to share their story, Shane Kenny and Sarah Pleitez. And we'll go from there, and they have a lot of interesting things that they've been doing that I think we'll want to hear about. And I'll just give you a clue, which is ice cream. So you have to keep listening now. So Shane, I'm so glad you could join us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey with testicular cancer?
Hey Joyce, how are you? Thank you for having me on this wonderful podcast. I just want to start off by saying I'm a 27-year-old male, originally from Ireland. I moved over to America about 6 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, I started having a small little bit of pain in my left testicle. Just kind of like in your stomach kind of pain. I just kept complaining about like, oh, I'm getting very tired. Oh, the sharp pain is in my stomach. I didn't really know how to explain it to anyone. So I kind of just kept it to myself. Until it got to a stage just there last year during COVID, about 6 months ago, I got diagnosed with stage 3 testicular cancer. So that was a huge shock. But like during the 5 years of just keeping the pain to myself, it just gradually got worse and worse to where it started going down my leg, it started going into my back. I started getting serious back pains on nights out with my friends. Kept blaming it on my bad stomach because I always had bad stomach issues, but I just didn't know it was anything to do with my testicle. Went to the hospital complaining of like a cyst on my testicle. They sent me to a urologist, and the urologist said, okay, we need to do surgery. Got surgery, and then they just diagnosed me with stage 3 testicular cancer.
So how long did you say you waited before you went?
This is going on probably 4 or 5 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's what I thought you said. So I just wanted to make sure. So
yeah, shocking.
Yeah. So Sarah, why don't you jump in and just tell us a little bit of how you connected with Shane? And I know you were with him during this journey, and kind of share that story.
Yeah. Hi, Joyce. Thanks for having me on here as well. So Shane and I have known each other for almost 4 years now. We're both bartenders in New York City, and, mutual friends and bar neighborhoods. We just kind of cross paths. We're now business partners. And we had just started our ice cream business, Big Shane's Ice Cream, about a year ago. So that was March of 2020, right before the shutdown of COVID. And throughout everything, Shane was complaining of pains and aches, and, he's had a bad stomach ever since I've known him, and just kind of thought, oh, well, maybe this is related. And so told him to go and get checked out. And so just kind of sent him on his way on his own. His family isn't here. My family's in California. So I know what it's like to be on your own, far away from home. And so, he went to the doctors and kind of kept coming back with different scenarios. Well, they told me this. Well, they told me that. Nothing seemed extreme until I remember the moment I'm sitting on my computer doing some work, and text messages are popping up saying, I have cancer. And, you're just like, what? You just went in for like a checkup. What happened? Like this, it was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to process. And couldn't imagine him sitting at the doctor's all by himself, being told that. And it's literally all he could say was, I have cancer. I'm not sure what's happening. So I was like, okay, get your paperwork, come back. Let's see what's happening. So that was just kind of how, it all started from there. Yeah. So that was just a shock in itself.
Yeah, it always is. No matter, I think, who you are, but especially when you're young, I think it's a very hard diagnosis to hear. So,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's just so obviously like 4 years ago, I went to go get this checked out. This is a time where I didn't know Sarah. I was on my own. I was how old? I was 22, so I was very young, naive, and silly, and I was in a country that I just wasn't familiar with. I had a lot of pain 4 years ago. I went into a urologist, and just it's a whole taboo kind of like scenario. Like it's involved your testicles. It's kind of like an area to where like it's meant to be forbidden. You're only meant to like show like certain number of people. It's a weird scenario. So I was going into doctors on my own, and they just didn't know what. I kept explaining my pain, and they just didn't know what to do. And they wanted to do cameras. They wanted to do a camera in through obviously the penis, and I was like, no, no, no way am I doing that. I am not doing that. I'm 22. I'm fine. I'll get over it. And then I just pretended the pain went away for a couple of weeks, and which it did. It did. It kept coming and going, kept coming and going. Some weeks it would be my stomach, some weeks it would be my back, some weeks it would be my legs. And then forward 3 years, or 4 years, the pain just got crazy to a point where I was like, Sarah, I need to go to the doctors right now. There's something wrong here. It's absolute fire downstairs. My leg is seized up, my back is seized up, and then that's why I finally went into urologist, and I said, listen, I have to get this stuff done. No matter what has to be done, I'll do it.
Well, it sounds so you're saying 4 years ago when you went to the doctor, they didn't know what it was or what to do, which is disturbing.
No. Yeah, I'm very bad with the doctors. Like go in there like a space cadet. I tell them, look, I always have to bring my mother in with me. I'll tell you that, which I'm kind of ashamed of. But listen, I'll hold my hands up because my mom would send me into the doctors on my own. I'll walk out. She'd be like, "So what's wrong with you?" And I'll be like, I don't know, because there's so much explaining.
Yeah,
there's so much like the doctor. They use words where you don't really know what's happening, and it's kind of like you don't really want to hear what's happening downstairs. So and then I got scared when they wanted to do the camera and all that, so I kind of just put it to the back of the head and carried on.
So then you went through chemo, is that correct too? You just finished that recently too, right? In December, your chemo?
Yeah, so got diagnosed in August and started my chemo in September. So that brought me all the way up to the last week of December.
Okay.
So yeah, chemo is very tough now, to be honest. I wouldn't have got through it if it wasn't for my friends, my family, and Sarah and my community. And then also just touching the subject of cannabis oils. Cannabis oils got me through chemo as if, like, I don't remember much, but like I thought chemo was pretty easy with the cannabis. I did a first week without any cannabis oil, and it was probably the worst week of my life. I was vomiting, I had nausea, and my fatigue was terrible. I couldn't sleep. And then when I started taking some oils, like the days just got a lot easier, a lot better, a lot happier.
And I've heard that from other people too, that the cannabis oil really does make a big difference. So I'm glad that you had that. So
yeah, it's crazy.
So
it's crazy. I never even knew.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot out there, I think, that would be helpful that many people maybe either don't know about or don't have access to. So now,
or it's frowned upon as well.
Yes, that's true. Well, so now we've kind of teased your ice cream company. So I don't know, Sarah, do you want to start, or Shane, to kind of give us the history of how you got going with Big Shane's ice cream?
Ladies first. I'll jump in.
Actually, it's called Big Shane's Ice Cream. Obviously, Shane is the face, and he's the Mikey likes it or not. Um, he is just he has a huge sweet tooth. I think one thing I've learned about the Irish culture and food is you always have biscuits and cookies and ice cream, and it's just a typical household staple. And that was just not in my house ever, not for any other reason that we just didn't like sweets. It's funny, as a kid, I didn't like chocolate, didn't care for ice cream, and so that wasn't a thing for me. So we were always talking about the lines around New York City at 12 midnight, 1 a.m. You'd see a line out the door and you'd be like, what club is this? What bar is this? And it was an ice cream shop. It didn't matter winter, summer, any season. There was always a line. So, it was just kind of a discussion. And so when Shane and I first met, I was bartending on the side. I'm a pastry chef full time. And he was like, oh, you're a pastry chef. Awesome. Can you make me some ice cream? I really love some honeycomb ice cream. That's not a thing here. I can't find it anywhere. And I'm like, what's honeycomb ice cream? Never heard of it. Me thinking there's actual honeycomb in there. It literally took me like 6 months to perfect this recipe. We're still tweaking it to this day. And this was about 2 years ago. Honeycomb is it's a salted caramel flavor, very popular in Ireland. And it's made with sugar, water, and syrup, golden syrup. And it's just like a toffee candy that's thrown in a vanilla base, and you get like swirls of caramel flavors and little crisps of honeycomb.
Pure sugar.
Pure sugar.
Pure absolute sugar.
That sounds wonderful.
So that was just kind of the start of it. It was all jokes and giggles. And then one day, I was recipe developing for a company. And so I've learned how to mold flavors together and how to test and what to do. And so we just were like, let's do this for real. Let's, kind of slowly start up an ice cream brand and see what's happening. So I got asked to open up a coffee shop with a friend behind a bar. So it would have been a coffee shop, speakeasy in the back of a bar called Tara Rose in Murray Hill. And, one of the things he said was, I'll sell your guys' ice cream here. So he helped kind of build our brand as well, because we were like, great, let's create some staple flavors. This was like a rush. We'll sell it here, and this was right before COVID shutdown. And that's kind of the beginning. But our original motto was to go business to business and make boozy ice creams and offer some obscure flavors to bars, because that was our industry and we knew a lot of people who would use it. But I'll let Shane take over that. Once COVID happened, it changed completely.
Yeah. Yeah, like the initial plan, like obviously I knew Sarah was a really talented pastry chef and she made me ice cream one day. And then so I was kind of being a bit kind of funny and cocky in behind the bar, because that's who I am. I'm entertaining when I'm serving drinks and cocktails. I was telling people that I'm doing a little side hustle making ice cream. And this bar owner heard me and he was like, hey, can you make me a margarita ice cream? I have a margarita festival coming up next month for my bar. And I was like, hell yeah, of course we can. It's Big Shane's Ice Cream. We can do anything you want. So I went home and I texted Sarah. Yeah, texted Sarah and I was like, we have our first order for next month. We need to make 2 gallons of margarita ice cream. And Sarah was like, Jesus, like, it's not that easy. And I was like, what do you mean it's not that easy? You can do it. So anyway, we got the job done. We delivered it and it was a huge success. And then he just kept putting in more orders and orders. And then we were like, oh, we could do this as a little side hustle. So then when Sarah got asked to do the coffee shop, we were like, okay, this can be where everyone can try our like ice creams, because everyone was hearing that I was making ice cream but couldn't get to taste it because we weren't doing small individual ones. So Sarah opened up the coffee shop. Big Shane's Ice Cream was about to have a launch party 3 days after St. Patrick's Day. I flew over my whole family. Jesus, spent a fortune because I knew like I was going to go back to bar work and then make that money back. So I was like, come on, mom and dad, come on over, my brother and sister. And then lockdown came and then it was just like, oh Jesus, we had all this ice cream. My whole family went home. We're sitting there at home, 2 weeks passed, still lockdown, no income. So we were just like, hey, we need to sell this ice cream, make some money. And then people were just like, whoa, this ice cream is so good. 700 pints a week when it was coming into the summer. So it was awesome.
And then I know too from the article I read that when you found out you had cancer, your community came together too and helped you distribute it to New York City as well as Queens and all around. Is that right?
Yeah, funny enough now. So during during all this, before obviously the cancer diagnosis, I went back to work because the bars opened up again. They were doing takeaway delivery and all that. So that's when the pain started hitting me hard. That's when I went in. I said to the boss, I was like, I need to leave work because I'm in bit. So that's when I went in, got the diagnosis, went through all the chemo, kept the ice cream going. But that's when the community came together. All my friends started helping me, bringing me in to my 7 o'clock appointment, bringing me home at 2 p.m. after chemo. You're in a very bad mood when you're doing chemo. You're very tired, you're very grumpy, you're kind of hating life because your energy is just zero. It's not a nice place. So if you know anyone doing chemo, please just be nice to them, treat them well, because they are liable to flip. I've flipped a couple of times. I was just like, lads, because my mates wanted to talk to me. When they picked me up, they were like, oh, Shane, how are you? It's so good to see you. And I was just like, stop, please stop. But my whole community, they were amazing. They sent over food, and they helped Sarah out. It was unbelievable. The community in Sunnyside, Queens, mostly Irish, but Americans, they bloody helped me out a lot as well. We all came through, thank God.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, they would, people helped us deliver ice cream. They would offer anything, I know you're busy, here's some dinner so that you can go keep providing ice cream, and Shane was actually, and I think his age worked in his favor at this point, but he was 1 week in chemo, 2 weeks off. And honestly, the day after chemo, he was fine. He was like, I'm great. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do some ice cream. I want to deliver. I want to go talk to so-and-so. I want to go, and he, through everything, was still willing and able and physically just wanting to do as much as he could for the ice cream. And so in that sense, the community just supported and kept, sending messages and wanting to buy ice cream. Where can I get it? And what can I do this? And
they kept ordering ice cream, didn't they? And I was like, oh.
It was a good and bad thing because it was
a good and bad thing because I was sitting there and Sarah had to put me to work. So I'm there after chemo, and I was putting labels on the packaging and then falling asleep and then waking back up and doing more packaging.
Yeah. Well, he did, and we both did, and the community just in general in Queens and everybody here, we couldn't have done it without all of this support, and Shane was a bartender in this neighborhood that, living and selling and working and all of these things. So everyone knew who he was. And so I think just literally he'd walk out of the apartment and people would scream Shane, big Shane, how are you? And that's so uplifting. Your family's far away. Yeah. You're going through chemo and you walk out your front door and you're almost a celebrity, and that's that really helps him kind of go through everything. So yeah, we got a lot of community support, which is amazing.
So through this whole journey, Shane, and you too, Sarah, but Shane, first, what do you think was the biggest challenge in dealing with your testicular cancer?
Kind of coming to grips that you have the C word, which is cancer. That's a scary word in itself, and kind of from going through the whole cancer process with the doctors and all that. The doctors can't really tell you much until they know. So at the first couple of weeks when they told me that I had cancer, I kept, even after surgery when they told me it was worse than they thought, they never told me how serious or how not serious it was. They just told me that it was serious and it's cancer. In your head, you're kind of thinking, okay, do I have a week to live here? Do I have a year to live here? Because that's what every person that isn't familiar with cancer thinks. They think that cancer is a killer. And
Yes.
it is, but it also isn't. You know, you have to keep your head up high. You have to like keep motoring on. You have to keep positive about the whole situation. And that's where I kind of struggled at the start. Like I didn't know any information, and honestly, I didn't even look up any information on my phone. Like I didn't sleep at night, and Sarah would get on the phone, and she would be like, "Why are you not sleeping?" And I'd be like, "I'm thinking about it too much," and she'd be like, "Just don't look at anything on your phone. Have a chat with the doctors because sometimes the phone and the information on the internet can be misleading, or it could be the worst information, you know, kind of way." So that was kind of the biggest uh, step to get over. But then as soon as I kind of got the go ahead, and as soon as I got talking to the oncologist and my urologist, and he was telling me, listen, testicular cancer, when got, is probably the best cancer you can get. And the way he said that, he was like, obviously it's not good getting cancer, but like testicular cancer is like 99% survival rate,
Yeah.
and you got it at a good time. Like obviously waiting 4 years is a long time
Yeah.
to be doing that. Like obviously you want to get it in the first year, so that's why I kind of encouraged. As soon as I got it, I told all my mates to check themselves. I told my dad. I told I put my whole family through a whole checkup. Like I told them to go get, like, because breast cancer is huge in my family, which I didn't know about at the start. I didn't think there was a lot of cancer in my family till I had a sit down with my mother, and I said, "Man, we need to look back to our parents, to our grandparents, because my grandmother had breast cancer. My mother's two sisters had breast cancer, so it is in the family." So that was kind of the biggest struggle, was getting to know what cancer is and getting to know that cancer is in the family and how to deal with it.
Sarah, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so kind of writing on the end of his knowing your family history is a huge one.
Yes.
Because I've never dealt with cancer in my family, and as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been. And so Shane, as far as he was concerned, there hadn't been either. The doctors was like, "Well, does cancer run in your family?" And he immediately said no. And so we talked to his mom, and he's the first male in his family to have cancer. Females are the only ones that have ever been diagnosed, and it was all breast, which is interesting to see it kind of transfer over. It's obviously a hormonal trait of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
if you can even specify it like that. But he was the first male, which is why he had no clue. And so even then, it was still a little taboo to talk about it. And knowing that, I don't know if he would have been a little more on top of it, or a little more willing to do certain
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
or go to the doctor quicker.
You would have. I was very I was very like naive, uneducated, um, ignorant about the whole situation, and that's where it comes from. I keep going back to like the Irish mentality. Like Irish men are probably the thickest people like in the world. They're just so stubborn and just like, no, no, I'm not going to the doctor like that. I'm grand. But like, you're not. Like, there's countless men in Ireland that are walking around with a limp, walking around with like just like stuff in their stomach, like stomach problems, where they just don't care because they have to go to work, and that's kind of where
Yeah.
my fault was, because I was living check to check, because I didn't have any insurance, because I was in a country that I didn't know about. I just put it in the back of the head because my father is up at 5 o'clock every morning, and it doesn't matter if he's injured or sick or anything. He's up because he has to pay for his whole family, and that's kind of where I was thinking, if I'm gonna go to the doctor and if they're gonna tell me, listen, you're out for a month, like that's my bar job gone, you know. So the fear of losing my job as a person, that as an Irish guy in America, is very worrying. So that's kind of where I left it at the back of the head, and I just didn't get it sorted. But you just can't do that, guys. That's what I'm telling all my friends, my family. You just can't leave it at the back of your head, because it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah. And it's just anything. You don't really know how hard something is until you have to go through it yourself. I've never dealt with any sort of cancer in my life. I've had, sicknesses and different things, but never cancer. And I just didn't know anything about it. I was super naive. I had had friends whose parents had had cancer before, and I was mortified once I went through it that I didn't check up on somebody as often. Just a simple, how are you doing today, makes such a huge
Yeah.
difference when somebody's going through these moments. And
Yeah.
you start to realize who is really on top of that. And, those people were like our saving graces. I had, excuse me, taken on the business on my own for a lot of the time. I was coordinating all of Shane's pickups and drop offs. I kind of turned into almost Mother Bear and was like, okay, like who's going to pick up Shane today and who's dropping him off. And I think COVID was a really big one. We haven't really talked about that, but going through this during COVID, Shane had to go through it by himself 100%. He was not allowed any visitors in the hospital. Fortunately, they did allow me to go in his first round of chemo, which was really nice because I got to see it firsthand and understand the process and know what his day-to-day would be like. But other than that, he had to be on his own. So what we did to kind of boost his spirits every day was a new person would drop him off in the morning and a different person would pick him up in the afternoon so that he would still get his visitors in on the days that he was in. And that was super helpful. And in New York, it's very hard to find somebody who not only will give up their time, but has a car to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was difficult. So, the support of, by chance, one of my old bar regulars is a urologist. And
Oh,
when all of
wow.
this had when all
Yeah.
of this had gone down, she was our angel. Like a huge, huge thank you to Courtney, because when I had found out, I was so sad at work one day that I had told one of my friends, my coworkers, and she was like, "You should talk to Courtney. She's a urologist." And so I did. And she put us in touch with the best doctors in the city, did all of the legwork for us. And that was another thing that I didn't realize was such a huge help until the end, was she had done all the legwork for us, because all they said was, okay, you have to go have surgery now. And you just trust the doctor. You don't know who to go to. And then they say, okay, next
Yeah.
chemo. And you have to look for yourself as to who carries your insurance, what's closest to your living situation, how can you get there? And these are all the things that she really jumped in and just totally eliminated and took off of our plates. And so,
Yeah, that's kind of where. So kind of my first doctor that we had, my first urologist. So I was going to see him on my own, and he was telling me that, oh, it's just a cyst and all this, and then we'll put you on antibiotics. And then I'm going home and I'm telling Sarah that, oh yeah, I'm on antibiotics, don't worry. And then when I went back, he was kind of like, oh no, this is cancerous. And I'm kind of like, huh? What do you mean? You just told me 2 weeks ago that it was a cyst. And he goes like, yeah, we need to do surgery in 2 weeks. So I'm like, I'm getting hit with so many kind of like punches. I'm getting shocked so many times. I'm on my own as well. And remember, I told you I don't do well listening to doctors when I'm in there. So I'm coming out with small little snippets of information, and that's where I'm texting Sarah saying that, hey, the doctor's telling me I have cancer now and I have surgery in 2 weeks. And I'm like if you're telling a young man or a young woman that, like, listen, it's fine 1 week, and then in 2 weeks later it's a whole different scenario. You're kind of like, I was very shocked. I literally stood in the middle of Manhattan on my own, eating a salad, nearly crying. Like I didn't know what to do. I was kind of in a very vulnerable place, and then that's where Sarah, thank God, she opened up her mouth in work, and she just found out that one of her regulars was a urologist, and she took over. She was kind of like, listen, let me take over, because it's all about who you know, not what you know. You need to have friends. Like sometimes doctors just think, like, use you as a number. Like whereas Courtney, she was kind of like, okay, this is a family friend. I'm going to get you the best care.
Yeah. And she did. And it was amazing, even to the time. So when Shane had gone in for his surgery, they expedited it as quickly as possible by the time. So he had gone to one doctor that he was assigned to just by residential location. And so after we had started talking to Courtney, she was like, I have a friend who's a specialist in this specifically. This is where you should go. So she had sent us on to a second opinion, and we decided to move forward with this doctor. And he was amazing, expedited it within a week. Shane was in the surgery room. And so because they were all kind of friends and she knew me, Shane had given them permission to talk to me while he was in surgery. And at this point, they didn't know it was cancerous. They just knew that it was a lump that needed to be removed. And so while he was in surgery, she calls me and she says, I have permission to talk to you and I need to let you know what's happening. And they had already known that it was cancer and that it had spread into his lymph nodes, abdomen, and all the way up to his lungs. And so I'm walking down, I remember walking down the street looking for somewhere to find breakfast, killing some time for the surgery. And she calls me and tells me he has cancer. And I'm not a very emotional person. And so my emotions came flooding. I hysterically lost it in the street, walking down Fifth Avenue in the middle of Manhattan, broke down into tears. You see people staring at me, but no one knows what to do or what's happening. And I just hysterically lost it. And then about 30 seconds later, I was like, okay, what do I do? And so she walks me through the whole situation. But in that sense, I never could have broken down like that in front of him. So, and that's why we call her our angel, because she eliminated so much stress in certain situations that we had no idea how much stress she had alleviated until it was all said and done. And so by the time Shane had got to me, they had to wake him up from surgery and tell him, and still in anesthesia, still through all of his, just going through a whole surgical procedure, was still foggy, cloudy, had no clue what's happening. They wake you up and say, you have cancer. Okay, you need to go home now and get out of here because it's COVID. So, so all of these things, and he's texting me, calling me, are you here? What's happening? They're telling me something I don't really understand. I said, I know the full story. You can come down whenever you're ready and I'll explain to you what's happening. And on the car ride home, I had to tell him his diagnosis. It's insane the way it all worked out. But, I was so thankful for that connection. And we know that so many people go through this, don't have that.
Right.
We're just like, oh, how can we help anybody that's going through this, And that was the one thing that we were so thankful for, was just being given a 10-step ahead of the game throughout every single process that we went through, and it's just stress. You're just relieving stress. And this is such a high stress situation. You don't know until you go through it.
Well, and you make a really good point, especially in New York City, but I've interviewed other young men who, have had testicular cancer, but have also talked about finding a doctor who has experience with this, because as you saw with your first urologist, who it sounds like didn't know what it was, had you wait 2 weeks. And there are places around the country that you can find where they have experience, they being the physicians, and they know how to treat testicular cancer, do whatever surgery and so forth. So you're really lucky Courtney was there, like as you said, your angel, because I think it really made a big difference for you. So I'm so glad that it happened. So
it did. It was kind of like a person you could ring and she could kind of talk to you off the phone and say, she could dummy it down. She could be, listen, Shane, don't worry about it. We got you. You're in good hands. Whereas a doctor, when he's in his uniform, has to protocol and say the correct words and the correct terminology and all that. That's where I kind of struggled at the start, because the doctor can't tell you that, hey, listen, you're going to be okay. Kind of way, because there's some scenarios where it's like you're not okay, and then the doctor is like, then he's held responsible. So sometimes the doctors have to save their side before they kind of explain what the situation is. So that's what I kind of learned going through my process.
Well, I also will just say quickly before I get back to ice cream, that I'm glad you told your family, Shane, as well, because I think that's another roadblock for many young men, is to check their testicles, and people, it's like doing a breast exam, it's like, oh, everybody knows that. Well, no, they don't, and
no.
So,
and you don't know till someone kind of goes through it. So all my friends are aware of it because I've gone through it. But like the amount of people that actually get cancer is crazy. When it kind of touches you, when you kind of like I went through 24 years of 25 years of like no cancer, not knowing anyone that has cancer, till me getting diagnosed with cancer and my auntie getting diagnosed with breast cancer within the same week. So like my family got hit pretty hard in 1 week. So that's spread awareness with me. I'm always telling my friends and my family just go get checked out.
yep. No, I think the family history is important. I'm adopted, and I have found my birth family, and I know my history, and there's lots of cancer on my mother's side, my birth mother's side. So, which I've had too. But let's go back to your ice cream now, because what are you going to do now? COVID's still here, but are you going to be back in your bars and coffee shop, or what's going to happen with the Big Shane's ice cream?
Yeah. So we got a small little mention on Fox 5 Good Morning Show. So they were just doing a small little article on how a small little business came about during COVID, and then obviously because I got cancer and how it went along with the whole cancer process. But yeah, Big Shane's ice cream is just getting bigger and bigger each week. This summer is going to be crazy. We're moving into a lot of bars. We're moving into a couple of shops. We're moving to manufacturing at the end of the month. We're getting a company to make our ice cream for us upstate.
Oh,
They're going to put it.
wow.
Yeah, I know. We're
That's
getting
great.
fancy now. We are. We're moving into a huge freezer, and then that will just give me a chance to get out and just chatting to people, and then it'll give Sarah a chance to just grow the business like through media and through like the logistics and all that. So we're just getting bigger and bigger.
So, Sarah,
Yeah,
are
we're
you
really
going?
excited for that.
Yeah, are you going to be the recipe developer for the ice creams?
Yeah, so all of our recipes so far are homemade. They're all of our recipes. I create them, Shane approves them. And I call him Mikey likes it because he loves to take a bite and either says it's delicious or it's horrible. So he's very honest, which I love hate, but it makes me better.
I get in trouble a lot.
I'm like, be nice. But yeah, no, we have a lot of pending flavors. We've tried to perfect our staples up until now. So our honeycomb, we have an Irish ginger swirl, which has Irish cream liqueur in it. We have our Rocky Road to Dublin, which has a little bit of Guinness Stout in there. We have like our Irish staples that we're really trying to make sure that they're 100% solid before we move it into factory setting. But that is the most exciting part, is we've gotten, to the point to where COVID has actually helped us grow and in a good way. So now we could mass produce and all of these things. And flavors, we have so many flavors. Everybody wants a certain, do this and Irish coffee and raspberry ripple, and what about some more vegan line? And so we're super excited. This summer has a lot to bring. We're super thankful to even have this opportunity throughout the cancer and COVID and everything that we've been through. And it just seems like that was 5 years ago, because this whole year has gone by so fast yet so slow.
Yeah.
So it's been a really great thing, but we're excited to move forward with all the ice cream and kind of make this just a story behind us at this point.
Yeah, put it in the back of the head again.
Yeah.
One of the most unusual flavors I had was in Kansas City a couple of years ago with my brother and his wife, and it was burnt ends ice cream, because Kansas City's a big barbecue town.
Yeah.
It was different. I'm not saying it was a favorite, but it's it's something different. I guess you could add some whiskey or something to that, maybe. But I thought that was
people are starting to get brave now with ice cream. I'm just waiting for tomato ketchup ice cream.
Oh gosh.
Or mayonnaise ice cream.
We used to make peach ice cream. We had fresh peaches and would make that when I was a kid. But So now,
Oh, that sounds
Sarah,
delicious, actually.
are you doing your pastry chef in the coffee shop? Are you still creating pastries or?
No, not anymore. So COVID had everything had shut down, and because the coffee shop that we had opened up was still brand new, they ended up merging it with the bar, so it wasn't its own separate entity anymore.
Okay.
Which actually worked better for everybody. So I had helped them kind of create this item, like, all their food items, some drinks, and help them kind of create a separate brand. But then merging it in with their bar was better for them. I also realized I am not a 6 a.m. person, because all of my other jobs, I didn't have to start till 9 or 10. And so, because I wasn't the baker of the day. And so, when I started doing that, I'm like, oh, this is just not for me. But it worked out in everybody's favor. COVID, with the reopening of everything in COVID, we decided it's best that I focus on the ice cream as much as possible to kind of help us get to this point. We did have some delays, obviously, with the cancer. We would have hopefully been into manufacturing
Or
6
now,
months
yeah.
ago. Yeah. But we're okay. We're organically growing. So
Great.
it's actually worked out in our favor. So no, I'm just focusing on the ice cream right now. And, it's literally Shane and myself, who do everything. We do have a designer that helps us, just because I'm not 100% perfect in, Photoshop and Illustrator. But other than that, it's just been him and I. We don't have employees. We don't have anything. We just figured out along the way.
That's
So,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah.
So my last question for both of you, and Shane, I'll start with you, is what advice, and you've already kind of mentioned this, but if other young men are worried about having testicular cancer or think they might have it, any tips you want to provide to them?
Yeah, yeah. As I said, just please, guys, just open up your mouths. Just say it to someone. Say it to a friend. Say it to your dad. Even say it to, like, I would have said it to my mother if I was back in Ireland, but I didn't want to burden her with the call and all that. So just obviously check yourself a lot of times. And my mates are always like, how do you know you've something in there? And I was like, listen, you know your body the best. No one else does.
Yeah.
You know yourself. You'll know one day when you come across something that just shouldn't be there. Let me just put the charger in. Sorry.
Okay. So Sarah, how about you as a caregiver? Do you have advice for other caregivers who are helping someone with testicular cancer?
Yeah, so, along the way, my goal was to alleviate the stress off of Shane, which I feel that, along with the help of friends and family, we were able to do that. So when you hear Shane talk about it, he has no clue as to when his appointments were, or he didn't have to schedule anything. He literally just had to show up and get better. And that was our goal. And so one thing with that was, you know, reaching out to the person not only who's going through the cancer, but who's aiding in the helping process was super, super
Yeah.
helpful. Everyone who kind of would text me or call me on a day to day and just check in to see how I was doing. Just it it validates everything that you're working for, and also allows you to kind of process the situation. I'm very good at turning off emotions and just going and, okay, let's do this. Let's fight. We got this. And I think I had to learn how to process. And I wasn't going through it physically, but mentally and emotionally it was extremely stressful. So just kind of reaching out to the people that are, even his parents. I would check in on them on a daily and tell them what was happening. Your son is doing great. He's, or today's he's, having an okay day and he's sleeping half the day. I would let them know what was happening, because they were so far away. And I think just constant communication and not being afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Some people I
Yeah,
know never reached out because they feel like, well, that's so personal. I heard about it, but I didn't want to ask you. And I'm like, well, I would have more appreciated you been like, hey, listen, I heard what's happening. If you need anything, I'm here. Or I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Like, those tiny, tiny
Right.
words are the best thing. It's, when you're mourning something or going through, and I don't want to say mourn because that's associated with death, but you're processing these situations. just the thought that somebody else is thinking about you is extremely helpful. People don't know what to say or do, and they kind of look at you and just kind of feel sad for you. And, you know, it's just the acknowledgement, I would say, is the biggest thing. And, we had that left and right, and I'm super thankful for that. My family and my friends, Shane's best friends were checking on me all the time, and that's also really nice, just to support. Support is
Yeah,
everything.
support is everything, and then kind of just like the mental aspect, like mental health is obviously serious within young men, especially in Ireland, especially in America. Like when between the ages of 20 and 25, like you're very young, you're very vulnerable. So just guys, just get out and just talk to each other. I know it sounds a bit weird that like, oh hey, guys don't talk to each other, but like honestly, you need to.
Yeah.
There's just not enough men talking to each other, and then that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like I'll touch back on what I was saying. Just you'll know yourself when there's something wrong with you. So just please go get it checked out, because you just don't want to leave it too long. When it's too long, it's going to be too late, and it just creates different problems, which is just harder to face. But just to support in the community, just reach out to your friends that are going through this. Like the little things, like bringing food to me was like just unbelievable. Like just the small little tokens of appreciation and the love was just crazy.
Yeah.
So last question, really last question. Where can our listeners find Big Shane's ice cream if you're in the New York City area?
So we are located in a few different wholesale locations where you can pick up pints and half pints and things like that. But in the next month, things are going to be changing to where you could go straight on our website and order shipments nationwide.
Oh.
So that's our goal for distribution and manufacturing, so that you can just, no matter where you are, New York or not, you can try Big Shane's ice cream. Yeah.
Yeah. Is their website live now? Can you give us that URL?
It is yes. So it's bigshanesicecream.com, and you can actually put your email into a mailer so that once we start shipping, we'll send you a promo code, try us out, kind of get the notifications when we're ready to go. And hopefully within the next month to 2 months, everything will be, past the beta testing and make sure that everybody gets their ice cream perfect.
Wow. I'm ready. I'll be looking. So I want to thank you both for being with me today. This was a really good conversation. Very, I think helps a lot of people. And I'll just tell our listeners to join us next time for Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Remember during Testicular Cancer Awareness Month to talk with your sons, brothers, husbands, partners, and others about this cancer that affects 1 in every 250 males during their lifetime. Teenage boys through men in their 50s can be diagnosed with testicular cancer. And in 2021, the American Cancer Society expects diagnosis of almost 9,500 men with this disease. And remember, about 440 of these men will die from testicular cancer. Be vigilant and speak up if you find a lump on your testicle. And join us next time for Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer from the Max Mallory Foundation.